The glass slipped. Just a splash. A mistake. But before I could say anything, his hand struck my face. The music didn't stop, but I did. My cheek burned, my knees hit marble. I felt the crack in my lip before I saw the blood. His voice followed, louder than the crowd, louder than anything. "Useless! Get out!" I didn't move. Not yet. The silence in the room was full of stares. Some shocked, some entertained. Then I stood, slow, every breath tight in my chest. My brother Miles stood across the room. He looked at me, then looked away. Not a word, not a step forward. I turned toward the exit. My heels echoed against the floor. No one stopped me. Outside, the air bit my skin. The night was cold, but not as cold as that room. I walked to my car, hands shaking, still bleeding, still silent. He slapped me so hard I tasted blood before I hit the floor. It wasn't private, it wasn't subtle, it was in the middle of the gala, in front of everyone. All because I spilled a little wine. His ring tore my lip, my cheek burned, the glass shattered beside me. Then came the words, "Useless. Get out." I looked up, dazed. No one moved, no one helped, not even Miles, my own brother. He stood by the bar watching, then turned away. They went back to their drinks. Back to small talk, like I was background noise. I stood, heels slipping slightly on the blood-slick floor. My body shook, but I didn't cry. I walked out. Not a single hand reached for me. Outside, the cold stung, but it was honest. Inside, I'd been erased. Outside, I finally knew what I'd never be again. I stepped into the cold. No coat, no words, no one behind me. The sky hung heavy, the air bit through my dress, but I kept walking. Each heel strike echoed like a question. Why didn't anyone stop him? Why didn't Miles look at me? I reached the car, hands trembling, lip bleeding. I didn't feel cold, just empty. Inside the car, the silence wrapped around me tight, sharp. I gripped the wheel, took a breath, held it. Then I exhaled everything. The wine, the slap, the crowd, the shame. My phone lit up. 53 missed calls. Father, Miles, the family assistant, all flashing like sirens. Not one said, "Are you okay?" I stared at the screen. I already knew they weren't checking in. They were checking control. That's when I felt it. Not sadness, not fear, but something colder, clearer. I had nothing left to protect, nothing left to lose, and for the first time that felt like a beginning. People say legacy is a gift. In my family, it was a leash, tight, silent, golden. The Graces weren't just respected, we were untouchable, unquestioned, unkind. My father, Thomas Grace, didn't build a business. He built a kingdom, then ruled it like law. Miles was the chosen heir, polished, precise, always right, even when he was silent. And me, I was the shadow they paraded. The daughter they smiled at while gripping my arm too tightly. They called me kind, but what they meant was obedient. They meant invisible. When I spoke too loud, I was emotional. When I stood my ground, I was difficult. After my mother died, I became a symbol, a quiet one. Thomas picked my schools, my clothes, even my smile. If I wore black, he said it looked like mourning. Maybe it was. I wasn't mourning her. I was mourning the version of me that had to shrink just to survive the Graces. I learned early, don't speak too much, don't cry, don't ask, don't need. Just smile when spoken to, sit straight, and never ever make a scene. So I followed the script. Good grades, clean clothes, small steps. I got into law school, but I walked away. Instead, I took a job at a shelter for displaced teens. Quiet work, gentle work, work that made me feel real. Father called it failure. A Grace doesn't waste time helping people, he said. He stared at my acceptance letter like it insulted him. You had a seat at power. You gave it up for pity. Miles didn't say anything. He never did. So when the gala invitation came, I hesitated. The annual Grace Foundation holiday party. I knew what it was, a stage for them, a test for me. Still I went. Wore the black dress that used to be Mom's. Wore it like armor. I didn't go to be seen. I went to prove I could survive. Quiet, respectful, unbroken. The mansion glowed with glass and silver. Laughter spilled like wine. Names floated through the room, names that opened doors mine never could. I stood near the back, smiling at strangers who didn't see me, nodding at jokes I didn't hear. When the waiters thinned, I poured wine for guests, not to serve, just to blend in, to take up less space. From across the hall, Father's laughter rose, deep, controlled, proud. Miles beside him, nodding like a shadow. For a moment I thought, maybe I did it. Maybe I passed. Then my heel caught the rug. The glass tilted. The wine flew. It arced in the air, a slow crimson ribbon, and hit the floor. My breath stopped. Time didn't. He turned. His hand came down faster than the shame, faster than the silence that followed. But the violence didn't start there. Not with his hand. It started long ago, with every time he looked at me like I didn't belong. The slap just proved he meant it. My head snapped sideways. The slap rang louder than music. My balance broke. The wine glass shattered under my heel. I tasted blood before I understood I was bleeding. Lips split. Warm drops trailed down my chin onto white marble. The room froze, every eye on me. Some wide, some narrow. No one moved. Then his voice came again, sharper than glass, useless. Get out. He didn't sound like a father. He sounded like a man firing an employee, like he'd been waiting years to say it, and finally had the right audience. No gasp, no protest. Just that thick, frozen silence that absorbs cruelty like it's normal. I turned, slowly. Miles was standing by the bar. Same drink, same silence. He looked at me, then away. Not in guilt, not in fear, just distance. He didn't speak, didn't step forward, didn't say my name, and that somehow cut deeper than the slap. I didn't wait for him to speak again. I didn't ask why. I already knew. I turned my back to them, to the chandeliers still glittering, to the whispers that had already moved on. Stocks, vacations, business, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't bled on marble. Each step across the gravel driveway scraped. My heels cut into stone, but I didn't take them off, not yet. I reached the car, opened the door, slid into silence. The leather was cold, the windshield fogged. My fingers gripped the wheel, trembling. Still no tears, still no breakdown. I wouldn't give them that. What I felt wasn't sadness, it was something harder, sharper. Like a blade moving through fog, clarity. I saw the birthday where he gave Miles a Rolex and gave me silence, the dinners where I sat invisible, the lectures I got instead of love. I thought this night might bring peace. Instead, it brought proof I didn't belong. When I got home, I didn't go to my bed, I didn't shower, I didn't even take off the dress. I dropped my heels in the hallway. They landed with a dull thud, still stained with wine and blood. My phone lit up again. Buzzing, buzzing, buzzing. Calls from Father, from Miles, from the family assistant, from Grace Holdings. Not one message asked, "Are you safe? Are you hurt? Do you need anything?" I sat on the edge of the bed. The screen glowed in my hand. All those names, once sacred, now just noise. The calls weren't about care. They were about control, containment. I knew the pattern. I'd seen it for years. He hits, he silences, he spins the story. And I was expected to play my part, to disappear, to stay quiet. But I didn't answer. Not this time. I turned the phone face down, let it buzz, let it scream. Because for once I didn't owe them silence. The phone kept buzzing until finally a voicemail came through. I stared at the screen. Didn't want to hear it. But I pressed play anyway. His voice filled the room. Calm, composed, like nothing had happened. "Last night was unfortunate," he said. "But accidents happen. Let's not blow this out of proportion. Unfortunate. Not assault, not humiliation, just a mild inconvenience. You embarrassed yourself," he continued. "Don't embarrass this family further." That was it. Not a single word about blood, or silence, or pain. I played it again. Listened for a tremor in his voice, a crack, anything human. There was nothing, just strategy, wrapped in diplomacy. Then a text from Miles. We should talk. Maybe you misread the moment. Don't let emotions ruin what's left. What's left of what my pride, my voice, my place in a family that never wanted me whole. I stood up, dizzy with fury, looked in the hallway mirror, lip bruised, mascara smeared, and saw a girl who finally had nothing left to prove. I turned away from the mirror, but something on the shelf caught my eye. A faded green notebook, tucked behind a candle, buried under dust and years. I pulled it down with shaky hands, opened it, my old high school journal, but not filled with dreams. No crushes, no poems, just moments. Sharp, quiet, real. Dinner, he said, black made me look like I was mourning my own future. Cole got a Rolex. I got silence. A pattern. Father told guest stories so as I dropped out. I didn't. Page after page, a record I forgot I kept. Proof I wasn't imagining it. Proof I wasn't too sensitive. There was a system, and I'd been trained to forget, to swallow, to minimize, but not this time. I flipped to the last blank page, wrote slowly, the night he hit me. Then I kept going. Who was there? What he said, what Miles didn't. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but it felt like the first brick in something solid. It wasn't a plan, not yet, but writing gave me weight, a center, a spine. I had spent years shrinking so I wouldn't offend, wouldn't stand out, wouldn't break the image. But now I wasn't shrinking, I was remembering. And remembering made me solid. I wrote everything. Every insult disguised as advice. Every public correction masked as guidance. The gala, the wine, the slap, the silence. When I paused, my fingers still gripped the pen, as if letting go would erase it all. The next morning, I barely slept. The gray Boston sky pressed against my window like even the weather wanted me quiet. But I didn't feel quiet anymore. Just full, raw, ready. My phone buzzed again. Another call, another message from the estate, then an email from someone named Dana, the family's PR woman. We hope to resolve this discreetly. Please refrain from public statements. There it was again. Not concern, just control. I closed the laptop and stood up. I needed air, not the kind outside, the kind that lets you breathe without fear of being watched. So I drove, not to work, not to a friend. I drove toward a name I hadn't spoken in years. Celia, my father's sister, the one we never mentioned, unless it followed words like reckless, emotional, embarrassment. I remembered whispers. She refused the man father chose, sold her inheritance, started a nonprofit in Vermont. Madihori, your kingdom is built on fear. Then she vanished. No more invitations, no more photos. But I remembered her fire. She was the only adult who ever said no to him. I pulled up to a quiet brownstone off Davis Square. The buzzer still had her name, C. Grace. I hesitated, then pressed it. A pause, then a voice low, steady. Hello? My voice cracked. It's Elena. I don't know if she buzzed me in. No questions, no small talk, just an open door that had never truly closed. Her apartment smelled like books and tea, warm, lived in, nothing like the marble silence of home. Photos lined the shelves, dogs, mountains, cluttered joy. A space that didn't ask for permission. Celia stood by the window, red curls streaked with silver. Same sharp eyes, same fire in her spine. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. I've been waiting for you, she said. Just that. And I broke. Words poured out, the slap, the silence, the voicemails, the threats to stay quiet. She never flinched, just listened, every second, every word. When I finished, she poured tea into a chipped mug, then said softly, "You know your father hit me too." Not with his hand, with his words, over and over, until I started to believe him. I stared at her. "What did you do?" She smiled. "I walked out. Then I built a life so solid not even his voice could shake it. And for the first time, I believed I could do the same." We sat in silence, no rush. No fixing, just space. Then Celia said, "They want your silence, Elena, Because your voice, it's the one thing they can't control. I felt something shift. Not a scream, not a plan, just a knowing. A click. I hadn't come here to hide. I'd come here to begin. Celia showed me the guest room, small bed, crooked bookshelf, view of the alley. It was nothing. It was everything. For the first time in days, I felt safe. Not watched, not managed. She didn't ask me to explain again, didn't ask for details. She just handed me a blanket, looked me in the eye. Tomorrow we start. I didn't ask what that meant. Didn't need to. I nodded. That night I slept with the green journal pressed to my chest, not for comfort, but to remember every word they tried to erase. Tomorrow wouldn't be quiet, and that finally felt right. Morning came gray and slow. The air smelled like coffee and old paper. Celia was already at the table, printer humming, folders open, papers spread like puzzle pieces. This is where it starts, she said, not with lawyers, not with threats, but with truth. From a storage box, she pulled documents, old emails, letters, bank records from years ago. Each one told the same story. A man obsessed with control, with image, with silence. He's done this before, she said. To me, to old employees, even a former partner who disappeared after a quiet settlement. I felt my stomach turn. It wasn't just me. It never was. My phone buzzed again. Missed calls 97. The latest message read, "Final warning, let it go." Signed T. Grace. Not Dad. Not even Thomas. Just a brand. It didn't scare me. It hardened me. Celia pointed to my journal. "That's your core," she said. "Now we build around it." And so we did, one memory at a time. We started with the gala. Names, face, words said, words not said. Then the fundraiser last fall when he told a reporter I was between jobs. The Christmas Miles got a car. I got, "Your presence is enough. Be grateful." I saved the voicemail, backed it up twice, then again. Celia showed me how to encrypt files, how to track asset transfers, how to search public records without leaving a trail. Every detail mattered, even the ones I thought were too small, too quiet. By evening, her dining table was a timeline, color-coded, dated, documented. Then she turned her laptop toward me. "You need to see this. A spreadsheet, leaked data, real estate transfers. One caught my eye, a beach property in Cape Ann, moved to an offshore trust. 3 days after the gala, he was hiding things. Fast, quiet. He's scared," I whispered. Celia nodded. "They always are, but only once they realize you're not the little girl they built this system to break." That night, I stood in the hallway outside the guest room, staring at a photo of Celia, younger, softer, but still burning behind the eyes. She looked free, not untouched, but undefeated. I wondered if I had that in me, that fire, that fight. Then I turned and caught my own reflection in the mirror. Bruised lip, dark circles, tired eyes, but upright, still standing, still here. I picked up my phone, typed slowly, paused, then finished the message. "What do you know about publishing the truth they don't want told?" I sent it to a journalism professor I once admired. Someone who told me, "Your voice is your witness." I didn't know if he'd respond. Didn't know what I'd write if he did. But I had the green notebook. I had the records. I had my name. For the first time, my story felt bigger than their version of me. And I was ready to let the world see what they tried so hard to bury. The reply came 2 days later. But not from the professor. From Miles. Subject line: "Let's talk." No greeting. No warmth. Just a polished message. Just like him. "Dad wants to clear the air. Just the three of us. No press, no drama. We can fix this." Fix like I was a leak. A PR problem. I stared at the screen. Didn't answer, just showed it to Celia. She read it once, then again, then said, "Go." I looked at her confused. "Not for them," she said. "For you. See who they are when they're no longer performing. We chose neutral ground, a law office downtown, private room, 4 walls, no chandeliers, no cameras." I arrived first. Miles walked in next. Pressed navy coat, eyes low, then him. Thomas Grace, flanked by his assistant who handed him a folder, then disappeared. He sat across from me, calm, confident. "You look tired," he said, and in that moment I knew he still thought this would end quietly. Miles cleared his throat first. "We're here to make this right," he said. Careful, controlled, rehearsed. Thomas leaned forward. "You made a mistake. That's forgivable. But digging involving Celia leaking financial records, that's reckless." I didn't blink. "So is slapping your daughter in front of 100 people." His jaw tightened. That was a moment of frustration. "You embarrassed me," I almost laughed. "You hit me. And somehow you're the one who felt ashamed?" Miles shifted in his seat. "Hal, no one's saying it was okay, but there's a way to fix this without blowing everything up. There's no clean way to cover abuse," I said. Thomas slid the folder across the table. "A non-disclosure. Sign it and we move on. You get a settlement quietly. With dignity, as if he could buy back what he shattered." "I'm not signing anything, and I'm done being silent." His voice dropped. "If you go public, we'll respond. With everything we have." I looked at him. Steady. "I'm not afraid of what you think you have left." Thomas leaned back, his stare sharpened. "You forget who built you. Without this family, you are nothing." Miles looked away. Again, I turned to him. "Would you let him hit your wife?" He flinched. Didn't answer. "Your daughter." Silence. "Then why is it different when it's me?" He lowered his eyes. No words, only weight. I faced Thomas again. "You watched me bleed. Now you want my loyalty." His voice rose cold and furious. "Your behavior has always been dramatic. Celia poisoned your mind. This rebellion ends now." I stood. Hand steady, heart calm. "No," I said. "It begins now." He stood too. "You will come back. You always do. This is still your blood." I stepped toward the door. Paused. "You never really knew me. That's why you thought I'd stay quiet." I didn't slam it. Didn't need to. The silence behind me said everything. And this time it belonged to them, not me. Outside the sky was low and gray, breath fogged in the cold, but I didn't shiver. Not from fear, from release. They had shown me who they were. Now I could stop hoping, stop shrinking. I didn't go home. I went straight to Celia's. She looked up from her laptop, didn't smile, didn't ask, just one question. "Are you ready to burn it down?" I nodded, and we began. Everything we had gathered, the journal, the voicemails, the records, the sudden property transfers, spread across the table. 3 encrypted drives, one for safety, one for backup, one for delivery. Celia handled logistics. I handled the voice. That night I wrote the story, not just about the slap, but the silence before it, what it meant to grow up in a house built on image where truth was edited and emotion was a weakness. I didn't write with anger. I wrote with clarity, with weight. And for once, the words weren't for survival. They were for justice. I didn't hold back. I wrote everything, the birthdays forgotten, the dinners where I was corrected, not celebrated, the gifts Miles got, the lectures I received, the comments, "She's too soft, she's not built for pressure, keep her quiet," the rooms I cleaned after the guests left, the dress codes, the curfews, the warnings. I wrote it all because someone had to. Celia helped me match journal entries to real events, tax filings, real estate records, emails, witnesses who remembered just enough. She contacted an old friend, an investigative journalist she trusted. He agreed to verify it all. Double check, triple source. He wasn't interested in gossip, only truth. We timed the release. Christmas Eve, the same night as the Grace Foundation Gala. Same venue, same crowd. But this time I wasn't there to pour wine or disappear. I didn't need an invitation. I had something better. The truth, they built their empire, hoping no one would ever tell. The hotel glittered on the hilltop, glass gold and polished smiles. Inside, champagne flowed, laughter danced between chandeliers. It looked just like last year. Almost. I wore a black coat, simple, no makeup, no mask. I walked through the lobby like I belonged. Not to them, to the moment. Across the ballroom, Thomas stood on stage, speech in hand, smile rehearsed. He talked of dignity, of family values, of building a legacy. At exactly 8:05 p.m., phones lit up. One buzz, then 10, then dozens. Heads turned. Screens glowed. Breaking news. Allegations against the Grace family, abuse, financial misconduct, internal silencing. Documents, voicemails, names, dates, my story, laid bare, verified, public. A donor stood, then another. Whispers rose like wind through dry leaves. Thomas's voice faltered. His assistant was already dialing. Across the room, Miles stood frozen, hands clenched. Then Thomas snapped. "This is a smear job. She's unstable, vindictive," but the mic was still on, and this time the world was listening. I didn't wait to see the whole room turn. I didn't need to. Thomas was unraveling, gripping the podium, still pretending he had control, but the cracks were everywhere. In the crowd, in the cameras, in the silence that followed his outburst. He tried to spin it. Call me bitter, call me broken, but this time I wasn't the one on trial. I turned, walked out through the same doors I once fled in shame. Coat wrapped tight, head high, no one followed, no one stopped me. Outside the air was sharp, cold, but not cruel, not like that room. My phone buzzed again, but it wasn't fear anymore, it was proof. Proof that someone had heard. Messages from strangers, from classmates, from women I'd never met. "Thank you. I thought I was the only one. You gave me words I didn't know I needed." Thomas built his world on silence, but tonight I had turned that silence into a storm. 3 weeks later, I moved into a small apartment above a secondhand bookstore. 1 bedroom, exposed brick, no marble, no staff, just the scent of old pages and wind through thin windows. It was quiet, but not the kind forced by fear, the kind chosen, the kind earned. I bought my own furniture, picked my own lamp, hung a photo Celia took of a mountain trail. For the first time, every object around me was mine. Not borrowed from legacy, not approved by anyone. The news cycle moved quickly, but not before it landed. Thomas was under investigation for asset concealment, internal abuse, and financial misconduct. Sponsors pulled out, board members resigned. Miles went quiet. He sent one email. "I hope you find what you're looking for." I didn't reply. Celia visited every Sunday. She brought tea, new books, laughter, and slowly, without asking, she helped me remember what safety felt like. Not perfection, just peace. One morning, an envelope slipped through my door. No return address. Inside, a single note written in sharp, unfamiliar handwriting. "You destroyed the family. Hope you're proud." I read it once. Then again. Not for meaning, for memory. I folded it slowly, dropped it into the trash. Because no, I wasn't proud. I was free. Pride wasn't the goal. Truth was. Freedom was. And I had it now, not loud or blazing, but steady, quiet mine. I started volunteering at a women's center downtown. Nothing glamorous, just listening, teaching, holding space. I led a writing workshop, helped survivors tell their stories not for headlines, but for healing. One woman asked, "How did you know it was time to speak?" I paused, then said, "When the silence started sounding more like them than me." She nodded, eyes full of something I recognized, and for the first time, I knew this chapter wasn't an ending. It was what came after surviving. That night, I sat by the window, legs pulled to my chest, steam curling from a chipped mug of tea. Boston blinked beyond the glass streetlights flickering through winter fog. Life moved on below. Taxis, laughter, footsteps. I wasn't part of it. Not yet. But I didn't feel left out. Just still. I reached for the green notebook. The first page still read, "The night he hit me." I flipped past the others. All filled now, dates, names, pain made visible. Then I found the last page. Blank. Waiting. I held the pen. No shaking this time. And I wrote, "This is the first night I don't feel like I have to explain myself to anyone." I didn't cry, didn't smile, just closed the book. Not to forget, but to mark the shift. Because I wasn't the girl who stayed quiet to be loved, or the daughter they only showed off from a distance. I wasn't his useless girl. I never had been. Days passed quietly, no press knocking, no chaos, just stillness. One afternoon, I sorted through old boxes, photos, documents, things I had once packed in fear. I found a letter from my mother. Yellowed, folded, barely legible. It was addressed to me, written months before she passed. If you ever feel small, I want you to know you were never meant to live inside someone else's idea of who you should be. I read it 3 times, then pressed it to my chest. It didn't heal everything, but it gave me something they couldn't erase, her voice. I tucked it inside the green journal. The last page wasn't blank anymore, but it still had space. So I wrote, "You were right, Mom. I wasn't small. They just needed me to be." I closed the cover slowly, and for once it didn't feel like the end of a story, but the start of one I finally got to write on my own terms. Not long after, an email appeared in my inbox. No subject, no sender name I recognized. Inside, a scanned article. My story, clipped and circled, beneath it just one sentence. "You'll regret this." No signature, no courage. I stared at it. Didn't feel fear, didn't feel anger, only recognition. The same silence dressed as power, the same hands trying to erase what they didn't control. I closed the laptop, let it sit there. Unanswered, unbothered, because the story was out now. Too wide to hide, too real to undo. The journalist had done his work, careful, thorough, fair. My voice wasn't gossip, it was testimony. And every time someone tried to push it down, it pushed back harder. Not out of spite, but because truth once spoken doesn't vanish. It roots, it echoes, it finds others who need it. And somewhere, someone was reading what I had once been too afraid to even say out loud. That was enough. Weeks passed, quiet but not empty. I kept showing up at the Women's Center, kept listening, kept writing, kept breathing. One afternoon, a girl, maybe 19, sharp eyes, shaking hands, lingered after class. She didn't say much, just held out a folded page. I opened it, her story, handwritten, raw. At the bottom, she wrote, "I didn't think I could say it." Then I read yours. I didn't speak. I just nodded. And she smiled, small but real. That night I walked home slow, let the wind tangle my hair, let the silence feel soft again. In my apartment, I lit a candle, no occasion, just light. And I realized my story didn't need to destroy anything else. It already did what it came to do. Made space for others, for truth, for me. Not to scream, not to fight, just to exist. Fully, finally. And in that quiet I knew I hadn't just left the old world behind. I'd built a new one. The world kept turning, but slower now. Quieter. Mine. One morning I opened a letter, official, sealed, stamped. It confirmed what we knew. Thomas Grace under federal investigation for fraud, asset concealment, retaliation against whistleblowers, 3 sponsors gone, board dissolved, the foundation frozen, no press release, no apology, just silence like always. Miles sent one more email, short, colder than the last. "You made your point. Hope it was worth it." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say, not to him, not to any of them. Celia and I met for coffee. Same cafe, same table by the window. She brought a book. I brought peace. We didn't talk about him. We didn't need to, because the power they once held over me was gone. Not stolen, not destroyed, reclaimed, piece by piece, memory by memory, page by page, and now for the first time I had no one left to answer to except myself. Healing didn't come in a wave, it came in pieces. Small, uneven, real. A quiet morning without dread, a laugh that didn't feel borrowed, a night without checking my phone for threats. I planted a small fern by the window. It leaned toward the sun like it had never known shadow. I envied that. Then I watered it anyway. Celia gave me a pen. Heavy, simple. "It's for writing things that aren't about them," she said. I didn't use it at first. But one night, I opened a new notebook. Not the green one, a blank one. No history, just possibility. I wrote about the bookstore downstairs, the woman who always wore yellow, the man who sang softly while shelving fiction. Nothing dramatic, nothing painful, just life as it was, as it could be. That's when I realized I hadn't just ended a story, I had stepped into one that no longer needed permission to begin. At the center, we started a new workshop just for writing names. Not the ones given, the ones claimed. Some wrote the names they'd forgotten. Others wrote ones they chose. One woman wrote hers in blue marker and cried for 10 minutes. I understood. Names carry weight, and silence, and history. For years mine had felt borrowed, defined by someone else. Elena Grace, daughter of Thomas, sister of Miles, background to their spotlight. Now it was mine again. Not because I changed it, but because I reclaimed it. I stood at the front of the room, said it out loud. My name is Elena. My voice didn't shake. No one flinched. And in that moment, I felt something land. Not applause, not pity, just recognition. They nodded. Not because they knew my story, but because they had one too. And maybe that was the quiet revolution, not telling the loudest truth, but letting it echo in others until they knew they could speak theirs too. One evening after class, I stayed behind to clean up. Markers uncapped, chairs uneven, a quiet mess that didn't feel heavy. In the corner, a mirror leaned against the wall. Old, scratched, I caught my reflection. Paused, no bruises, no mascara streaks, no fear tightening my jaw, just me. Hair pulled back, eyes tired but clear, breathing. I stepped closer, not to fix anything, just to see. For so long, mirrors had been places of judgment, places I learned to shrink. But this time I didn't shrink. I didn't look for damage, I didn't ask what they'd see. I looked at myself like I was mine and whispered, "You stayed, you fought, you told the truth, not perfectly, not painlessly, but fully." The woman staring back wasn't a version, wasn't a role, wasn't an echo of someone else's power. She was whole, flawed, present, and finally, after all the silence, she believed herself. I took the mirror home. Celia helped carry it carefully like it was something sacred. We leaned it by my bookshelf next to the journal, next to the letter from Mom. That night, I lit a candle, opened a fresh page, not the green notebook, the new one. And I wrote, "Legacy isn't what they leave behind. It's what we choose to carry forward." Thomas built his on silence, on image, on fear. But mine, it would be made of voice, of witness, of people who knew how to survive and still soften. The article had been archived, quoted, passed around. But it wasn't the article that gave me peace. It was the echo, the emails, the letters, the single sticky note left at the center's door. Because of you, I told the truth too. That was enough, more than enough. A legacy rewritten in ink, not theirs, mine. And this time it would not be erased. Spring came slowly, not loud, but real. The bookstore opened its windows. The streets smelled like rain. I started walking without checking shadows, started laughing without listening for tone. One morning, a new girl came to class, quiet, hunched, eyes down. She didn't write, didn't speak, just sat and stayed. At the end, she slipped me a folded note, 3 words barely inked. "I'm still here." I held the paper like it was something breakable, then folded it gently and placed it in my own notebook, not to save her, but to remember we don't heal alone. That night, I walked home under soft light. No calls, no warnings, just street lamps blinking like quiet applause. I opened my door, put on tea, sat by the window, and wrote one sentence. This is where my story truly begins. No green journal, no footnotes, no father's voice, just mine, steady, rooted, and finally free to write without fear of being erased. I no longer asked if I belonged. I just lived. Morning routines became rituals, watering the ferns, stacking returned books, opening the blinds to soft sun. No one watching, no one grading. Celia once said, "Peace is built, not given." I understood that now. The women at the center kept writing. One brought her daughter, another brought a scar she hadn't named until now. I wasn't a leader, just a witness, a space, a reminder. And somehow that was more powerful than being loud. One evening, I passed a newsstand. My face was gone. The headlines had moved on. That felt right, because healing the real kind isn't a spotlight. It's a steady light you carry quietly. I walked past the cafe where Miles once waited. Didn't stop, didn't wonder. Some distances deserve to stay. I didn't need closure. I needed truth. And I had it now, not tied in a bow, but alive in every choice I made without asking for permission. There was a time when every room I entered felt too big for my voice, too loud for my truth. I used to count my words, lower my eyes, sit small. Now I take up space, not with noise, with presence. At the center, we moved into a bigger room. More light, more chairs. Celia came one afternoon. She watched in the back as the women read their pieces. Some shaking, some fierce, all heard. Afterward, she hugged me. I wish your mother could see this. She does, I said. And I meant it, because sometimes you build what your mother never had. You become the safety she never found. And that more than survival is legacy. I walked home, late moonlight soft on the pavement, past windows where families gathered, laughter behind glass. It didn't make me ache. It made me grateful for the home I built inside my own name. No more rooms to shrink inside, only ones I choose to walk into whole. One weekend I spoke at a small gathering, nothing grand, just a circle of chairs, a room that smelled like hope and coffee. They asked gentle questions, real ones, not headlines. A woman near my age raised her hand, soft voice, sharp eyes. Do you ever wish it hadn't happened? The room went still, not tense, just waiting. I thought about it, the slap, the silence, the breaking, the building, and I said, I wish it hadn't hurt, but I don't wish it away, because without it, I might still be quiet, still shrinking, still calling survival peace. They nodded. Some cried, no one pitied. Afterward, we stayed, talked, laughed, not about trauma, about music books, plants that kept dying, then coming back. Before leaving, someone pressed a note into my palm. You reminded me I'm allowed to leave what breaks me. I held it all the way home, not as proof, but as permission, because now I didn't need to be asked to choose myself. That night, I sat by the window, same chair, same view, but I wasn't the same. Below the street hummed with life. A mother pushed a stroller. A boy kicked a can into the curb. Ordinary things. And yet they felt like proof that life goes on, that it can begin again. I reached for the green journal, flipped to the first page the night he hit me. I touched the ink, didn't flinch, then turned to the last blank page, wrote slowly, deliberately. This is the first night I don't owe anyone my silence, and I never did. I closed the book, not to bury it, but to mark the end of their version of my story. Because I wasn't his shame. Wasn't their scandal, wasn't the mistake in a black dress. I was Elena Grace, whole, visible, still here, and whatever came next, whatever I chose to build would come from that truth. I was never useless, never broken, never theirs. And now, finally, fully, I was mine. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of something unspoken or gave you the courage to name your own truth, I invite you to share how it made you feel in the comments below. And if you're ready for more stories that honor healing voice and the quiet power of standing back up, subscribe to the channel. There's more to come, and maybe you'll see yourself in the next one.